Hello and welcome to Paper Plays Julie K. Thanks so much for stopping by. This video is a continuation of how to construct paper bag journals. In this video, I share with you the pamphlet stitch and sewing machine methods of constructing a paper bag journal. Previously, I showed you how to use a hole punch to construct a journal. On a side note, I will also be recording videos where I decorate these journals, so be on the lookout for those videos coming up shortly on my channel. So the next method is the pamphlet stitch, and since you guys already watched the first hole punch, you're gonna construct it exactly the same, except for this time, instead of having a flap, I chose to not have a flap and just have each end cut off, so there will not be a flap on this one. But the paper bags are all cut. And this one I did not include an envelope. It's just paper bags and tea-dyed paper. So since this bag is small enough, you could just punch 2 holes and tie it off. But I do like to have the little 3, or I usually do 4 holes on mine and tie them off. So then there's 3 little sections. I just find that it's quite sturdy that way. And so what I like to do is just take a scrap piece of paper. I hate measuring, so I take a scrap piece of paper that's the same height as my journal. So this one is 7 inches tall. And then my first step is to go ahead and I just fold it in half. Once I folded it in half the long way, I also fold it in half the short way. And what I'm doing right now is I'm just showing you one method instead of having to measure how to make your holes evenly spaced is all I'm showing you guys. So if you prefer to measure your holes and cut your holes, go ahead and do it that way. But I just wanted to show people a method that I learned a long time ago on how to use a scrap piece of paper to make your holes even. And so then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fold up to the middle fold line. And then I'm also going to fold down to the middle fold line. So now it should look like this. You'll have kind of 4 little sections there folded. So the next step is I'm going to take this bottom section and I'm just going to fold the end up to that first line. And then I'm going to take the top section and do the exact same thing, just folding up to that first line. Now the next part, if you look here, we need to make a fold in this top part and right here. And so what I like to do is I'll just find that middle fold right here. And then I have this fold right here, and so I just line them up. I just kind of look at the top, and so I'm making this line and this line meet. So hopefully that makes sense. And I just put a fold right there. And then I'm going to do the same thing right here. Is I'm going to take this fold right here and have it meet up with the middle fold. So now if you look at it, you can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we have 8 sections on there. I'm just going to show you guys. And so now I'm going to show you on this where to punch your holes, and this is going to be your template. And what you guys, I save these every time, so now if I make another journal that's 7 inches tall, I'm already going to have this template. Like, so here's a template that I have that was for one that was 8 1/4 inches tall. And so I will take this bottom, the very bottom fold right here where we folded up, and then on that middle section, I'm going to put a dot there. I'm also going to put a dot at the top where that first fold that we did up there. So then I'm also going to find the middle, and then I'm going to put a hole right here. So it's like from here I skip one and then I put a hole. Then the bottom I skip one and I put a hole. So now right where I have those black marks is where I'm going to cut holes. Now unfortunately for this, it's really tough to, unless your sheet of paper is short, to use a hole punch. This is where I like to use my screw punch, but again, if you guys don't have a screw punch, you can just, because this is a pamphlet stitch, you guys can just use an owl, which looks like this, AWL, or you can also use a big needle. So again, I'm just going to use my screw punch, and I have a really small head put on mine. There's different heads that you can take off to make different size holes, and I just have the smallest one because we are going to use a needle and thread to sew our little paper bag journal together. And you also want to make sure when you have a screw punch that you have some sort of self-healing mat underneath it. This is a self-healing mat. And so I'm just going to find the middle of each of these black dots that we drew, and I'm just going to punch a hole. And so now I don't know, since there's black dots there, I don't know if you guys are going to be able to tell if there's holes in each one of those now. And so that is my template for constructing the rest of the journal using the pamphlet stitch. So I like to do each page one at a time because I do find that sometimes pages move and then my holes get messed up. There are people who will just put their template here and then they'll go ahead with their paper owl or their hole punch and they'll just punch through all of the papers. And if that works, if that method works great for you, go ahead and do that. But again, I prefer to do each page separately. And so I'm just going to start with the cover and work my way in. So I just line up my template in the middle. And I still like to use a pencil, but if you trust yourself, you can go ahead and punch them right away. But I just draw little marks on the bag, and as you can see, it kind of moved off, and you just want to make sure your holes get punched on the fold line. So now you can see I have punched holes. And again, there's 4 holes, so that was the cover. I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to grab my next piece on the journal. And I'll do one more with you guys, and then I'll go ahead and punch the rest of them. And then I'll be back to show you how to construct this journal. And if you have any pencil marks, you can just erase them. But again, I have 4 holes. I'm going to go on to, I'll show you one more because this paper bag is smaller than the other sheets. And so what I do then with this one is I just approximate where I want it lined up. And since this is small enough, it won't, I line the top hole just slightly above it and the bottom hole slightly below it. So this one's actually only going to have 2 holes in it because it's a smaller sheet of paper. And so that's what that one looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest, and then I will be back. Okay, so now I've gone ahead and I've cut holes or punched holes in all of my paper bags, and also the little tea-dyed papers that I'm adding. So now for the next step, to go ahead and construct it using the pamphlet stitch, you are going to need a needle, and I like to use a little bit bigger size needle that has a little bit bigger head on it. And then I like to use wax thread, and so here's two different versions of wax thread that I like to use. This one's from Art Minds, and I think I buy this one at Michael's, and it is wax thread. And usually I find this stuff, they have some journal making supplies where they have some leather punch tools. That's usually where I find this type of thread. And then here's another version, and this one's called waxed cotton cord. And I'm trying to see if there's a name on it. And this one comes from Hobby Lobby, so there's no brand on this one, but it's a Hobby Lobby brand. And that's just waxed cord. And I find that with the wax thread, it's going to go in and out of your paper a little bit easier. And so for this one, you're just going to need one string, and then to measure the right size, what you do is you do it 3 times. So if my journal is about 7 inches long, I make it slightly longer, and then I triple that. So I've tripled my size, and then I add just a couple extra inches just for good measure. And so that'll give you more than enough thread to do this. So go ahead and thread your needle. And so this type, I'm going to tie mine off on the inside of my journal. And so the outside will look a little bit nicer, but then on the inside, if you want, you can go ahead and hang things from your threads. And so I want mine to be tied off in the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start at the second to top hole. And so I'm just going to thread that through all of my papers. And the paper bag journal, the smaller one right here, or the smaller paper bag, it's just going to lay like that, so I won't be threading it through the top or the bottom hole when I get to that one again. You're just going to pull the thread through. And I usually leave about the same size as my paper. And just to kind of hold it or reinforce it, I'll just tape it down with some washi tape. And again, washi tape isn't meant to be permanent, and I'm just going to stick it on my hand a couple of times to make it so it's not very sticky. I just want to temporarily hold it there so I don't lose it. So now my thread is on the outside of my journal, and so I'm going to go back up through the top holes this time. Sometimes you're lucky enough and you can pull it all the way through, and sometimes you have to kind of watch and thread it through each page. Usually I don't hold it this way, but I'm trying to hold it so you guys can possibly see. So now you can see I have the smaller paper bag right here, and this one, it doesn't fit through that hole because I didn't have a top hole on that one. And so we're kind of going through all those pages. So now I'm back again into the middle. So I pull it so then it's tight on the outside. So now I'm going to take my needle and thread, and I'm going to go back through that same hole that we first started with. And if everything's lined up correctly, you can put it all the way through. Otherwise, just do it individually, page by page. So now here, you are going to need to kind of hold it tight, but you don't want to make it so tight that your paper is going to bend, but you do want it to be taut. And so I'm holding this one that I accidentally took off of my washi tape, and then the back side. So if it feels good and it's tight, now we're again on the back side of the journal, and so you're going to stick your needle through the next hole down. And you're going to go through, and I'll kind of try and show you guys the best I can on camera. This is kind of hard to show, but you're just going to go through all of those. And since all my papers are lined up pretty good, the needle goes straight through, so that was pretty easy. Which is another reason why I like to make my holes in each individual thing, because I find that they line up better that way. So now we're back on the inside. So now we're going to go back down to the bottom hole, and we're going to string this through. And again, when I'm looking at it head on, you can kind of see all the pages just to make sure that you're hitting everything. And sometimes you're lucky enough and it goes through all of them. So pull it through to the back or the front cover. So again, at this point, while it's hanging out the front, you can see that this is a little loose right there. So I'm just going to do some tightening up of my strings. And that looks pretty good. So now when we're on the front, we're going to go back through one more time, and we're going to go back through this hole that's at the end of this this string right here. This is the hole that I'm going to go through, so that it should come back out. And everything's lined up pretty good, so you can already see that I didn't have to do each individual page there. So I'm just going to pull that through. And so now the biggest thing is just to go ahead and tie it off. So you can see I did have some extra string, but I do like that. And then what I end up doing with this string is I'll just tie it. Once I've tied it on and cut it, if I have any pieces big enough, I just recycle it and use it on some tags, so nothing goes to waste. So I just go ahead and make sure everything's tight. I take one more look. If I've already pre-decorated my pages, I want to make sure everything's right side up, but none of these are decorated, so I shouldn't have to worry about that. But I just take one last peek before I tie it off, because you can still deconstruct it if you have to. But it looks like it's put together pretty good. And then everything's tight, so all my strings back here are tight. And I'm going to go ahead and just tie them off. And I just tie a knot. Some people tie a bow, but I tie a knot. And again, I just look at it, make sure it looks pretty good. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut this longer string. I like my strings to not be any longer than the journal, but you can have them stick out of the journal if you want. So I still have a nice little side string that I can use for a tag. And then usually I like to hang something from my tags. I'll put some hearts or some butterflies. When I've done Halloween ones, I've put spiders or bats from them. You can do circles, squares, whatever makes you happy. So that's the basic pamphlet stitch. And then I'm just going to show you guys how to add a closure real quick if you want. I'm just going to be using some seam binding. And you can look right here where the strings that are on the outside. So what I will do is I'll just go ahead and attach or slip that ribbon underneath that middle string. And now I have a little bit of a closure. And so the next step is to go ahead and decorate. And when you decorate, if you want, you can go ahead and cover these with another piece of paper, and then these will be attached underneath. Or if you want your picture underneath, this can go over the top. So you can decorate it either way that you want. There's no right or wrong. And to be honest, most of the time when I create journals with pamphlet stitches, I usually decorate all my pages and then construct it. But I just, again, on this video, I just wanted to show you guys in this first video how to construct these journals. So that is how we do the pamphlet stitch paper bag journal. And so I'm going to reset up my camera and show you guys the sewing machine method. And before I do that, I just wanted to show you real quick. So I've already cut bags, and these are the small paper bags that I showed you at the very beginning. And so this one, all I'm doing on this one is it's just going to be the cover. That's the paper bag, and then there's tea bag pages on the inside. And then I also have one where I did the flap on this one. So I'm going to reset up my camera by my sewing machine, and then I'll show you guys how to do the sewing machine method for a paper bag journal. Okay, I'm back for the third method of constructing a paper bag journal, and I'm using my sewing machine. And I do apologize, the lighting over here is not that great. This is the best that I can do for this corner where my sewing machine is. And so I've already gone ahead and constructed the paper bag, again cutting off the bottom. And then this one I'm choosing to just use the paper bag as the cover, and the rest of the journal is all tea dyed or coffee dyed papers. Oftentimes I'll go ahead and decorate these first before I sew them, but just for this purposes of this video, I'm just going to put it together and then I'll decorate it second. And so I do like to, once I have my papers cut, again, each page inside is progressively smaller than the next. And you do have to be careful when you are using your sewing machine, because it can only sew through so many pages. Each sewing machine is different. So make sure that you're aware of what your sewing machine can handle and can't handle. This one for me, it has one paper bag for the cover. 1, 2, 3, and then there's 4 pages on the inside. And of course you can mix and match your pages or do different sizes. These are all just copy weight papers. And so I'm just trying to line this up, and I'm just doing a straight stitch on my sewing machine. And so if it's lined up right, it should just go through the middle. And again, I can't remember if I told you guys, I do like to use paper clips to hold mine in place. You know, when you're using material, you use stick pins. Well, for paper, I like to use the paper clips just to hold everything together. And I do like to do a back stitch just to make sure my string is in there pretty good. And so that's what it looks like on the inside. And that is one really easy way to put together a small journal. You can of course use these little books inside of your other journals. And it's up to you if you want to cut your strings or not. Usually I just cut them kind of short, but I let them hang. That doesn't bother me. So I'll do one more with you guys. This is another one that I constructed that has a flap on it, so this one will open. And again, I've done the same thing. So it's one bag, and then I actually only have 3 sheets of paper in there. And I line them up, and then I stick the paper clips on one side. That just holds it in place for me, and I'm just going to again do a straight stitch right down the middle. Again, I'm just doing a little back stitch just to make sure that it's secure. And just doing a back stitch again. So again, that is my journal. I'll just kind of move the sewing machine back and adjust the camera here so you guys can see it a little bit better. So there's that little paper bag journal with the stitching in the middle. And again, you can wrap a string or closure around it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this little tutorial of 3 different ways to put together a paper bag journal. And I am going to go ahead and continue this series on decorating these journals that you see sitting here that we constructed together. Again, we did one with the hole punch method. We did another with a pamphlet stitch. And then these other 2 I did with the sewing machine, really basic. And what's nice about these little ones is these are perfect for your purse. But you can also go ahead and use them as little inserts if you want in your paper bag journal. So these would fit inside of this journal right here, and then you'd have another little writing space inside this journal for one of these. And so again, thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you guys will continue this series with me and watch how I decorate these journals. Until next time, I hope you guys all have a wonderful day and happy crafting.